What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back for another video. Today's video will be over the final episode of Superman and Lois, as we have reached the end of the road for this series and reached the end of the road for the superhero universe on the CW completely. The era of the DC universe within that channel it's done. And you know, they couldn't have ended it on a higher note. That finale for Superman and Lois was some of the most just emotional stuff that I've ever seen. You know, I'm not a person that tears up easily, but I will proudly admit I teared up with some of the scenes in the end of that show with the flash forwards and whatnot, and we'll get into that. But the series, just kind of final thoughts about the series. This was something I didn't think would work when they first announced it. I did not have high hopes, just because of kind of the way he was kind of Easter egged in there, kind of the backdoor way that he was introduced into the universe within the Supergirl series. I don't know, at first he didn't strike me as someone that could be good for the part. But as his time on that show went on, and then after they got the announcement that this show was being greenlit, and we got those first handful of episodes, I was just like, wow, this Tyler Hoechlin brings something to Clark Kent, brings something to Superman that honestly I don't think we've really seen too much of. The way that he portrayed the character, Clark's humbleness, and his family, dynamic that he has with his kids and everything, we didn't really get a chance to see that in any other live action version that we've gotten of Superman. And it just worked, to put it directly. It just, the way they did it, and just the way the story was written, and just the stories that would come after that, it was a very well written show with great acting, and just I loved the show. And I'm so disappointed with how things turned out, but with the fact that they only got 4 seasons and this last season was only 10 episodes, it was still very well done. They were able to tell the story that they wanted to tell within those 10 episodes. And it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel like it was just too much at once. It was very well paced. And with our actors that are sprinkled in there, because as we know, they were reduced from full-time to only part-time for the most part. And just the way that they did it, it just worked. And I really enjoyed the show, and I really enjoyed the story. Seeing things that we really haven't seen on screen before as far as Superman and what they did with this version of it. And, they still had some surprises up their sleeve for this finale. But kind of getting into it, the finale picks up with the fight between Lex and Doomsday now being back and destroying the town of Smallville, going after the residents, and the boys doing their part, trying to get everybody to safety. And they try to step in to help their father because they see that he is losing. He's not going to be a match for Doomsday at this point because he's half the Superman that he used to be. And so the boys try to swoop in and do it, but of course Clark just kind of pushes them away because he doesn't want them to be in danger. He doesn't want them to be a part of this. He fears for their lives, but this is where we see that argument between him and Lois. Lois saying how they're not kids anymore. They don't live in this bubble. They live in the real world, and they are capable as long as they have each other. And Clark just pretty much accepts this. He knows this is true, but I guess in some sense, being a father and wanting to protect your kids, you don't want to accept that they can take care of themselves now. So he just accepts this, and he lets them help him in his own way. So they take Doomsday, they lead him all over the country, just providing a distraction so Clark can kind of recoup from this fight that he's had. And then they bring him back into Smallville, and this is where we've gotten the reappearance of John Henry Irons and Lana Lang. They kind of are talking about the relationship when the episode first starts, but they, of course, gets interrupted by everything that's going on in Smallville right now. And so John Henry Irons decides that he needs to do something, even though he doesn't have his suit and he hasn't had time to build a new one. He gets in there and he brings this new prototype that's kind of just basically a little explosive device. And so this kind of comes into play later, but he comes in with his hammer that he's been using. He still has that at least. And Superman leads the boys back into town. They lead Doomsday, and they kind of part ways there at the last second. And we see the hammer come through these flames, and it just blasts Doomsday right in the dome, cracks his skull, and kills him, of course, only temporarily. So Clark takes this moment and says that he has to take Doomsday to the sun because, of course, with this Doomsday, who was previously a Superman from another world, the reverse of everything that they know, the sun will actually weaken him while it's strengthening Clark at the same time. So he flies him towards the sun. And this is where we kind of get our first really emotional moment. I didn't think they would do it this way, but I love the way that they did it, and just kind of bringing it back. this moment where Doomsday is flying towards the sun, where Superman's ready to launch him into the sun, he kind of fights him there for a second, but he kind of has this moment of being lucid again, being who he used to be. And we see his eyes turn blue, and he just kind of sticks up his hands and says, you know, you don't need to fight me anymore. I'm not going to fight back. And he's kind of accepted his fate, realizing this monster that he's become and everything that he's lost. And so he just kind of accepts his fate, and Clark pushes him in the sun, and he just turns to ash. And it was a really, in a way, a kind of a beautiful ending for that character, considering who he is and who he, you know, what he's done and everything. And I really appreciated that, and it was just another example of the things that this show has been able to accomplish versus what we've seen in the movie universe, what we've seen with the DC, CW, TV verse all of these years. They just were able to do things that the movies were never able to do, which in this case make us feel bad for the bad guy and see him go out in the way he did, remembering who he was and the fact that he knows that he's been doing wrong and he's being led astray by Lex, and this is not who he is, and he does this for his family that he has since lost. So, you know, right there we have the end of Doomsday, and Clark is just taking the extra moments there to re-energize, soak in all this solar radiation to re-energize his body, heal his wounds, and just come back to Earth in full strength, because this is where we have the last epic battle of Lex and Superman. And, you know, what a battle it is, because we have this moment here where Lex shoots these kryptonite-powered bolts or screws, and he launches them into Clark, and they just slowly start drilling their way into his body, and he's really struggling to get them out, but of course, he overpowers them. He goes after Lex, saying how you came after my wife, you came after my family, and you came after my town, and it's never going to happen again. And they come to a few blows, but Superman winds up kind of a sonic punch, for lack of a better word, and just blasts Lex right in the chest, which just shatters his entire armor that he has going, rendering it completely ineffective, and just he's falling to the ground now. And while all this is happening too, we have our Milton Fine, who turns out is not any kind of Kryptonian artificial technology or anything like that. He's just a computer genius, Milton Fine. He's just a regular guy from what we were given anyways. And he is arrested by John Henry Irons and the DOD and forced to kind of reverse everything that he's done. And this is kind of done off camera, but that kind of wraps up his story anyways. And so we've got Lex defeated. He's on the ground. And this is where we start getting our jumps in time. At first, we get just a full year, and we're getting wrap up to more characters and just wrap up to more story, and kind of, like I mentioned, kind of sprinkling other people in there to kind of just say goodbye to their characters too, because otherwise it just kind of would have been left open-ended in a sense. But we get this flash forward 1 year into the future where we're on the Kent farm again, and it's actually John Henry Irons and Lana's wedding. Because in the beginning episode, they weren't sure about their relationship or if they could really make it work, but we get that jump forward and we see that they've kind of settled their differences and realized that they do care for each other. So we're in this wedding. Clark walks her down the aisle, which is very appropriate, I think. And then we have Lois leading the ceremony and marrying this couple, and just kind of, I guess, bringing things full circle in a sense for John Henry Irons, who, as we know, when he was on his world, he was married to a version of Lois, and having lost her and everything, coming to this world and becoming very good friends with Lois, and just kind of closing that gap that was there where he was not sure, I guess, where he could ever move on or not, and whether or not he'd be able to ever look at Lois and see someone other than his dead wife. But we get this kind of full circle moments where she marries them. We go on to celebrate. We see Kyle and Chrissy with their new kid pregnant with another one. And so we're just kind of leaping through time at this point, because we get another time jump where we see Clark and Lois a little bit older, a little bit more frail, just spending their golden years, just enjoying each other's company, just kind of going through the motions. And we get more and more time jumps just progressing through the later years in their life. And as this is going on too, we have this dialogue, this overlap dialogue, with Clark explaining exactly what happened as far as how their life turned out and just how things eventually worked out how they were supposed to, how they could for that family, and how his heart that he got from Sam Lane after he made his sacrifice allowed him to live for another 32 years. And so we're just seeing them age, grow old together, enjoy their time together. And we also get grown-up versions of Jonathan and Jordan. And the actor who played the grown-up version of Jonathan is actually Bitsie Tulik, Lois Lane's real husband. So that was kind of cool, kind of, getting that cameo. Plus, he had directed some episodes in the past, but bringing him in to play this version of Jonathan, and we just see them enjoying their life, enjoying the kids that Jonathan and Jordan have, and they all, have this giant family. I mean, we're talking probably 7 or 8 kids between the two of them, so they have multiple grandkids, and they're just enjoying life, trying to make the best of the time they have left, but then it kind of takes a sad turn. And it makes a lot of sense too, but we have Lois, whose cancer comes back in a very aggressive form, and she ultimately loses her battle to this, and it's just piling on to the emotional just bonfire of this episode and of how this series is closing out. So we see that Clark and Lois are saying goodbye to each other as Lois is on her deathbed, as Clark is just explaining to her how you were the light of my life, you were everything right in my life, you were what gave my life meaning, more or less. And we just see her kind of look at him, and they exchange I love yous, and she turns away, and her dying words are daddy. So we can assume that she sees her father as she's passing, and this is something that Clark remembers very vividly for his remaining years, because we just continue on with his life alone. He never, of course, finds anybody else, because it's just really late in his life, so he's not going to do that, and Lois was his one true love. And we just see him progressing through the rest of his life, and he gets a dog, and he calls it Crypto, of course, because, if Superman gets a dog, it has to be Crypto, just going with the comic history and everything, but it's not a super dog. So it's just him trying to, find things to take up what time he has left, trying to have somebody there to be company for him. And he talks about how the boys do come and go quite often to spend time with their dad. And then we get, again, yet another jump forward where we see Kyle and Clark just walking through town. He's walking the dog and everything, and he has a heart attack right then and there, but Kyle's able to save his life. But from there, his days are numbered, because we jump yet again and we see Clark on his deathbed and saying how the moment of death was very just Nirvana-like, where it was a very euphoric moment, and we see him actually leave his body, go into the next life, or heaven, if you will, and he's being reunited with all these people that he's lost, or just these versions of them that he can kind of live in this happy place in his afterlife. And we see him reunite with Kyle and Christy, because we can just assume that they've since passed too. And we see him with the boys at some point, and we see him sit down with this version of Lex, or with Lex in the afterlife. And Lex is tearing up. He's got this look of just utter regret on his face. And of course, Clark, being who he is, he forgives him, which is very, again, full circle for everything that we've gotten for this series, and just the way that they're doing it. It just, again, it works. And I've just been blown away by this finale. And then we get the reveal of Lois and Clark being reunited, sharing an embrace, and the episode ends, and it's the end of an era on CW with the superhero universe. And it was very emotional, to say the least. I don't get too teared up about too many shows, but it was very good how they did it, how they give it just a full closure. They don't leave anything hanging in the open. And one thing I kind of grazed over, with the years that we're seeing jumping forward, we see the boys take on the mantle of being super boys, and we see them team up with their dad, and we also see John Henry Irons and his daughter. And then we also just have this moments where we have all 5 of them flying through the air. And what was really cool about that, other than the boys actually get their own versions of their uniforms, we actually see John Henry Irons, comic accurate once again with this show. He's got the House of L S on his chest, and he's got a red cape, so just very Man of Steel. I cannot express on how many different levels just this show was amazing, and I wish it could have gone on for longer. And to just kind of end everything on a happy note, though, being that, with this type of show, with it being a multiverse kind of thing where they can come back to this in some form or another, Tyler Hoechlin did say he is open to coming back, so we may see him again somewhere down the road. It won't be this version, because of course he has passed on and he's in the afterlife now, but then again, we started out with a completely different version. So maybe we could jump back to that version or some other version of Superman with Tyler Hoechlin donning the Superman uniform. And I just don't have enough good things to say about this show and about this universe, at least. And to say that it is once again very full circle, because if you recall way back in 2001, and I've mentioned this on multiple videos, it's just kind of unavoidable. Back in 2001, the superhero universe started with a version of Superman, and we're ending with a version of Superman. And so it just made everything feel that much more complete. And again, I'm very sad to see this show go, but I'm glad that they were able to end it on their own terms. No things getting in the way, no random cancellations and things like that. They were able to take the story and fully complete it. Emotional as it was very good. But anyways, guys, that is my review and my thoughts about the Superman and Lois finale. Damn good show. Wish it could be around for more. I just have no hope for this new James Gunn Superman movie. I just could not care less, actually, and I have no intention of seeing it. But maybe I'm alone in that. Maybe other people will give it a chance, but I have no interest in it. But anyways, again, I hope you enjoyed the review and my final thoughts about the show. I'll probably do another video kind of breaking down final thoughts about the whole series and everything. But if you did enjoy, please leave a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing, and I would really appreciate it. So until next time, guys, take care. Bye.